So today we are talking about our large interconnected global economy and how it does some damage to the environment and even causes some violence and poverty and some other related things. One very important issue with this interconnected economy is that it separates customers from the production. And so customers don't really know where their stuff is coming from and how it was produced and what resources were used for it. We're all buying products that are made by faceless people elsewhere on the planet, and many of them by unknown companies around the world. Because just notice, even if we're buying from a big brand that we know, they are likely sourcing parts or materials or ingredients from many other countries that we just don't know. So we don't know where our stuff is coming from. Now, you can find environmental damage from the economy all over the world in many different ways. But I focused here on rainforests because they're so insanely important. They capture carbon from the atmosphere, and we have a warming climate with too much carbon dioxide in it. And so the rainforests are critical to our efforts to solve the climate. And unfortunately, in climate change discussions, I'm not hearing enough about that. Like I said, it's this, push to go renewable energy, which is great, but we need our rainforests desperately. These areas of rainforest have the most intense biodiversity on the planet. So they contain 10% of our land, but 50% of our species. They are just so rich with life. And I believe these places are spiritually important. They are so deeply important to the world ecosystem. They have the strongest life force on the planet. And what's happening is these places of such dense life, you can have a place with so many species that has evolved over thousands of years, and then it's gone in one day. It's just gone. And it took thousands of years to develop. And the species living there that go extinct, they're never coming back either. And then a third example to talk about is in the Democratic Republic of Congo, known for short as DRC or DR Congo. This is the world's second largest rainforest in the world. So this place contains about 80% of a mineral called coltan, which is critical in making cell phones, laptops, video games, various electronics. There's a bunch of other materials that come from here, like copper, cobalt, zinc, tin, manganese, gold, silver, platinum, a whole bunch of other things. Some of them I've never even heard of. There's tons and tons of minerals from this place. So, the equipment I'm using to record and speak with you right now probably has minerals from the DRC. My cell phone and your cell phone, my computer and your computer probably have minerals from the DRC. So all of us are involved in this. The demand for minerals is also growing. So as we make the shift from renewable, to renewable energy to fight climate change, involving lots of new equipment and wiring and batteries and the electric grids upgrading and all that, will be a lot more demand for these minerals from this country. Also, the digital revolution is happening. So there's the growth in computers and gadgets and robots and big server farms and data centers and whatever else that's powering the internet and everything else computer related. All this is intensifying the demand for minerals. Now, you would think with all this demand that the DRC would make out like gangbusters and do really well. but in fact, it's one of the poorest countries in the world. It has a very unstable government. They've been making really slow progress toward democracy, but it's been really challenging. There's government corruption, there's violence. Um, it's just a mess there. Part of this violence is driven by these minerals that the world consumes. It's like this mixing of commerce with armed conflict. It's kind of like there's criminal gangs running the whole mineral sector. Um, and they're getting their money from the mining of coltan and other materials. That's how they're buying their guns and feeding their, guys with weapons and all. Now, this mining is not the only cause of this armed conflict, but it is a major factor, and it is funding this militarization of the place. The conflicts, it's just messy. They've got Rwanda right nearby, next door. And so there was the issues with the genocide back in the 90s, and that whole region has been destabilized by that process. There's clashes between Tutsis and Hutus, and that's also the case for in the DRC. There's also a genocide unfolding. There's a minority group called the Banyamulenge who have just been brutalized by these armed militias. Their villages have been burned, their cattle stolen, they've been driven from their homes. There's orphans, there's hunger, there's enormous sexual violence in this place, committed largely by these armed militias. And really, if you're a woman, this is one of the worst places in the world to be. It's incredibly dangerous for women. I'm going to just make a quick note that if the situation we're talking about kind of tugs at your heartstrings, there's a charity that you can contribute to if you're so moved. It's run by a friend of mine who lives in the DRC. His name is Reverend John Gisor. He's running this program basically to feed the hungry people. Like there's orphans, there's people who are homeless, and they're getting them fed. But also there's more long-term strategies working with farmers to help them increase food stability in the region. So it's really good work. I've donated some money myself. You might want to also. I donated just because I feel guilty because with my purchases I've contributed to some of this in the area. This mining that happens, a lot of it is smaller scale operations. So it's just, individual miners using very simple tools and lots of hard work. They get paid very little for their work, but it's a poor place, so they're desperate for whatever they can get. Some of them are, like in organized mines by companies, but some are just freelance. They just go out there and get what they can get and sell it. A lot of times workers are overseen by these armed militias. And the militias they have some turf warfare with each other. In addition to the sort of ethnic conflict and whatever, they're battling for turf because it's worth so much money. So they're, fighting with each other to capture an area to mine it. Often they're clearing jungle to do this. So basically they're taking all the fabulous nature and just removing it so they can get to the minerals underneath. And as they do this, it's environmentally destructive. I mean, not only the deforestation, but there's also erosion, pollution, a lot of water use. A lot of nearby waterways get polluted heavily by this sediment and the minerals that they're unleashing as they do this. This violence happening is destabilizing for the government. The government's having enough trouble already, but now they're managing violence in this sort of lawless, chaotic space that they just can't really control. And so it really undermines the entire governance of the country. And then that, in turn, makes it hard for the government to control the other ways in which deforestation is happening. Some is just through poverty. Like people are desperate for a way to eat and make a living. So they're going out there and they're logging, they're farming, small scale farms. A lot of people are using wood as fuel. So I forget the number, like 16% or something of the country is electrified. So a lot of people have no electricity, so they're just using wood to burn for cooking and whatever. So this lawless kind of chaos is just horribly bad for the forest, and we're losing it. This forest is not as well studied as the Amazon, so we're not sure if there's a tipping point here, like I described with the Amazon. But I mean, we assume that there is. We just don't know how close we are to it. So if that point is reached, it could affect water and food for the entire region because it would change the climate and the weather patterns. And this area of the world, in much of Africa, has already struggled, and there already have been famines. So to add that disruption of, loss of rainfall on top of that there could be tons of suffering. So this place, in terms of dealing with the climate, might be the most important place in the world, both because of this rainforest that we might lose, but also because of all the minerals that are there that there will be demand for as we switch to renewables. So that sourcing of minerals is incredibly important for the switch to renewables, but it's in this chaotic, lawless kind of situation. And so it's just kind of weird and contradictory to me that in our efforts to go green and fight climate change, we're going to support this place that's destroying the rainforest. Like our purchases of these minerals to go green is contributing to rainforest loss. Like we're not really getting anywhere with that. And so this contradiction, unless it's managed, we're not going to fight the climate. So I don't know, this is not all about the United States, right? But I just happen to notice that when President Biden took office, there are all these questions about, well, how is he going to treat China? What's he going to do about Russia? What's he going to do with Iran, etc.? I didn't hear anybody say, what's he going to do with Democratic Republic of Congo? Like, this is one of the most important places on the earth, and I'm just not hearing much conversation about it in political circles or in the mainstream news media. So with these 3 rainforest examples I've shared, notice what it's like to be in this interconnected global economy that divorces us from the impacts of what we're doing with our purchases. Like, if we could be up close to these situations face to face, could we actually spend our money and support it that way? So like, if I want to eat a cheeseburger, like, could we just offer our money to someone to go out there to the Amazon and just clear a bunch of forest and increase climate change? Or like, I want a package of cookies. I just have the munchies. I want to eat some cookies. Here, take some money, go out to Indonesia, level a rainforest, kill some tigers and orangutans, bring me back some palm oil for my cookies. Like, could I do that? What's the right number of killed orangutans that makes sense for my cookies? Like, what's the number? What's the number of orangutans that's worth it for my cookies? Or say I want a new cell phone. Yeah, my cell phone is still working. It still functions, but the new one just came out and it's kind of nice. It has some fancy features on it that I want. So here, take some money. Here, armed militias. out in the DRC. Take some money, go buy yourself some nice guns with it, you know? Round up some guys and go out there to the rainforest and clear it. Rape some women while you're at it, have some fun. Clear some rainforest, cause some erosion, okay? Bring me back my coltan for my phone, okay? Because I want a nice new fancy phone. Could I do that? It's just, it's really hard. And part of the problem of solving these problems is this fact that we're divorced from the impact of our actions. And that's why we need to change these systems in order to really make progress here.